2 years ago, I called this keyboard the most premium budget keyboard. Just pretend that it's here. What does that even mean though? Well, it was a really high quality custom keyboard with a really good price point. Premium and budget. But this board right here just blew it completely out of the water. It does come at a bit of cost though. If you're unfamiliar with QWERTY Keys and Neo, they're sister keyboard design companies that make high quality keyboards with great value. So they're kind of already competing with themselves. But with the Neo 75, I almost think there's like a switch that's been flicked. And don't get me wrong, Neo has always been on that blurry line between budget custom keyboard and premium custom keyboard. A lot of stuff here though is starting to make that line even blurrier. And for both seasoned keyboard builders and people completely new to the hobby, there's a lot to get excited about. So let's just go for it. All right, so this is the Neo 75. So as always, you get a ton of materials. I opted for a palm plate and an aluminum plate this time. So we're probably gonna use the palm, to be honest. Here we've got a hot swap PCB. Of course, you've got the magnetic daughter board here and all of the included foams. And then we've also got the included PCB clip-in Neo stabs. Pretty standard, came with the previous series of Neo keyboards as well. And then lastly, up in here is our regular accessories, a USB-C to USB cable, screwdriver, and a keycap and switch puller. So this board now comes with a dual mounting system. This is what looks like bottom feet. And here are the new gaskets. So they have much larger gaskets this time, and they're also in a pretty different shape. Looks like these are some sort of locating pin, and then maybe these lock into a pin in the PCB, but we'll see. We have two options for mounting system. And the other option is hidden away in here, but you get, might have to like pour it out. Yeah, you get these brass inserts, and this allows you to screw the PCB into the bottom case. So we'll also be trying this out. Neo is always on top of their stuff in terms of R&D and giving people options. So you also have 12 different case colors, 3 badges, and bottom cases in either copper or brass, which is very impressive for this price point. And lastly, in here is just some extra screws. And in the bottom here is, of course, the board itself. We've got this really nice sort of sheath for it this time. This is new. So this is the skeleton of the keyboard here without any of the internals. And the design is like all new. We've got this whole circular ripple thing going on, which shows up on both the top and bottom. And this piece is customizable. It comes with a few different engravings. At this point, can you guess why it's called the Neo 75 CU? The bottom of it, or this middle piece, is entirely copper. Well, that's one of the options. It also comes in brass, equally as flashy, and that makes up this entire middle section of the keyboard, which makes it incredibly heavy. And they don't make this subtle. You can see it on these sides peeking through these curves, at the back with this whole slit, and even at the front with this little lip, which is super neat. But this isn't a purely aesthetic upgrade. If it were, why not just paint it copper? These super dense metals make the board sound and feel really premium compared to off-the-shelf gaming keyboards. And there are a few scientific reasons for that, but we'll get into that later. The only thing that really carries over from the Neo 80, the company's previous board, is the whole curved aesthetic. Even the edges of the board are rounded off instead of the typical chamfering, which is where the sides have a little angled cut. But you can't even type on this thing yet, so let's get it built. First off, we're going to start with the PCB and install our stabilizers. These are lubed with XHG BDZ and 205 grade 0. Next, I'm going to add on the aluminum plate, and in here go Creamerons lubed with 3203. Now we get a choice. We can go with these crazy shaped gaskets, or the bottom mount screws, or both. I'm going to try the gaskets first. And now that our internals are done, we can get to the case. I'm going to open it up, slot in the internals, take out the corner switch because I forgot about it, and close the keyboard up. And we can finally install the keycaps, which are the very popular key set GMK Olivia. So I didn't have a great key set to match this copper color. I literally never do. I love copper keyboards, but I can never complement the color well. This is the best I could do, and I think GMK Olivia always looks pretty good with silver. Wouldn't you agree? Either way, this board is really elaborate looking, especially for the price.
which is actually pretty far off from what I thought it would be. But I'm not going to tell you the price right now. Hold on, before you write an angry comment, I want you to run a mental exercise. I want you to consider everything I'm going to tell you about this keyboard and take a guess at what the price is. It doesn't matter if you're a seasoned keyboard enthusiast or this is your first time hearing about a custom keyboard in your life. Take a guess and keep this in your mind. And we'll get back to this at the end of the video. Besides that, what about the sound? Well, it's alright. I think it sounds pretty plain, like a very high-pitched clack. But this makes sense because of the components that we used, like the aluminum plate and the creamer on switches. And I also tried using this keyboard without the little foam at the very bottom, and I think it sounds better with the foam left inside. It's just more full and less tinny. So really no surprises here, good or bad. And opening it up, I think I expected it to sound more interesting because there's so much going on inside. You saw earlier the new gasket shape, which they say is more secure, but also designed to reduce pinging sounds, which I think it does pretty well. But we also have our massive copper piece, and taking a closer look inside, these internal weight pieces, which don't really seem to be contributing that much to the sound profile overall. I can't complain though because I'm holding this board to a pretty high standard already. Neo is working towards improving things, even if those improvements are super marginal, so that's the most important thing to note here. And while the keyboard is open, I have to give my obligatory mention to the catch ball mount, which makes it really easy to open and close the case, and the magnetic daughter board, which takes away the need to fiddle with cables inside the keyboard. These are the most beginner-friendly custom keyboards you are going to get. How the keyboard feels is also pretty important. I think this build is a pretty good balance of typing feel. Since we're using an aluminum plate, it's not really going to move that much when you press on it, and this is with both the bottom foam inside and not inside. And it might be a little harder this time to make this board bouncy because of the larger gaskets. Either way, Neo's been going the route that I like, which is making all of the PCBs on the thicker side 1.6mm and not making any flex cuts. This makes the board feel a little stiffer, but does so much in helping it sound better, which I think is more important. One of the really cool things you could do with the Neo 80 was choose between a few different mounting styles to mount the internals into the keyboard case. And this would affect everything from the sound to the feel of the keyboard. So it was a super interesting way to try something new. This time we have a slightly different design. And unfortunately, there aren't nearly as many options for mounting this time around, but honestly that might help ease some decision fatigue. So when we were building the keyboard, we saw the two options, and I've been talking about the keyboard with the gaskets currently installed. Now I'm going to install the bottom mount, which is basically just screwing the keyboard into the bottom case, and let you know what I think.
Okay, so I've got this thing built in the gasket config currently. So I've always preferred the gasket mount for the Neo boards. The mounting style changes are never like a night and day difference. Like if I gave you one blind, you probably wouldn't be able to tell which one's which. But either way, we should still figure out what this one's like. And the first config we're gonna try is using just the bottom mount without the gasket. So I'm gonna go ahead and take all the gaskets out. We're also running this with no case foam this time. I wanna hear just the raw differences between the different mounting styles. Okay, now all the gaskets are out. So the bottom mount comes with two components. It's these little spacers and a screw. So there's indents in the case here, which actually hold a little protruding part of the spacer. So I'm just gonna go ahead and set all of these down. These don't really feel secure at all, so I'm hoping that it doesn't move around when I set the inner assembly on top. All of the spacers are in. It's time for the moment of truth. Okay, looks like nothing fell apart. I think the magnetic daughter board actually guided the inner assembly into place, which was actually pretty satisfying. And yeah, it looks like everything's lined up. So I'm gonna go ahead and screw these in. Oh shit. Almost lost the screw, but I'm gonna go ahead and screw these in now. So everything's screwed in. Feels secure, like I can lift the entire keyboard with just the inner assembly. So definitely much stiffer. It also does sound like a bottom mount or top mount keyboard. I think it almost sounds more dull, but definitely much stiffer. I'm honestly not a huge fan of how stiff it feels. I think with a palm plate, it might be a better balance, because with the aluminum here, it's just like really stiff. Okay, with that done, let's give both mounting styles a try. So I think what I'm gonna do here is remove all the screws, and hopefully I can just lift everything out and it'll all stay in place. Yeah, okay, looks pretty good. And then we're gonna have to take these screws out before we install the gaskets. All right, now the screws are out, the gaskets can go back in. Careful if you're building this board with long sleeves because I just knocked one of the spacers out. Hopefully we can just thread the gaskets through the spacers. And it looks like that knocked literally all of them out of line. So I'll try that again. Oh, okay, I see. So you can thread these spacers inside the gaskets and that holds them in place. That's much more intuitive. If you're building starting off with both of the mounting styles, just make sure that these spacers have the protruding part sticking out of the bottom of the gasket. So you should end up with 3 bumps like this. I'm just taking guesses here, but I think I would prefer the gasket and bottom mount combined over just the bottom mount because the gaskets might do some help in absorbing those extra unwanted frequencies like high-pitched ping and case vibrations and that kind of stuff. But we'll see in just a second. So I think it sounds more like the bottom mount than it does the gasket mount. And that makes sense because for bottom mount, you're literally screwing the inner assembly into the bottom case. But there are definitely aspects of the gasket mount that are coming through here. And it might sound like I'm just saying a bunch of stuff that doesn't make any sense, but once you get this keyboard in hand, I think you'll understand. There's just a little bit more pop or clack to it with the gasket mount installed with the bottom mount that I think the bottom mount itself doesn't have. But I think one of the big differences here, just from this very unprofessional test, is the spacebar sound. I think the spacebar sounded far better with just the gasket mount than it did with both the bottom mount and the bottom mount plus gasket mount. So a big reason for that is going to be screws and how close they are to the spacebar. So we have 2 screws here near the spacebar, and having screws closer to the spacebar is going to make for a worse sound. I think QWERTY keys recognize this because the layout of the mounting is actually different for the top and the bottom. This gasket is much closer to the center than this one, so they're trying to spread these out just a little bit to keep them away from the spacebar. And I think that definitely helps, but it doesn't completely solve the problem. So honestly, my take is to just go for the gasket mount and call it a day. But you definitely have the option of using the bottom mount or the bottom mount and the gasket mount if you so choose. And of course, it's going to depend on your build and your preferences. So I'm glad we at least have the option to go for multiple different mounting styles. So now we can talk about the sail detail. Like all the other Neo boards, this one comes with a ridiculous amount of case color options in both copper and brass. And this choice affects the accent piece on the top as well. We also have 4 different plate options: carbon fiber, aluminum, which I used, FR4, POM, and PP, which will give you a pretty good range of sound and feel. And also 3 pretty widely compatible PCBs. 2 hot swap, 1 solder, with the most expensive one being both wireless and hot swap. With that, it's finally time to talk about the price, so I'm not going to gatekeep it any longer. Just like the Neo 80, it's an entire range based on which parts you choose, and most people are probably going to go for the hot swap PCB that isn't wireless. The full pricing goes anywhere from $190 for the cheapest option to $230 for the most expensive option, but you can expect to be around the mid 200s. Was your guess close? Probably. Okay, let me tell you mine. I was actually expecting this board to be cheaper, but that's not a bad thing, and hear me out on this. So I took this guess before I knew anything about this keyboard. Of course, because Owllab hits me up for the review before there's any information about the board out to the public. So my guess was based on my knowledge of their past 2 boards, which were the Neo 80 and the Neo Ergo. And I reviewed both of these boards. They were both good, totally under $200, and just like what I was talking about at the beginning of the video, in the middle of these 2 premium and budget categories, but they lean more towards budget than premium. And I say this because 1, under $200 is still really difficult to achieve, especially with all the materials and features that they packed into these keyboards. And 2, they both had pretty simple design. Nuanced, yes, but in the end, still pretty simple. At least compared to this. This I was honestly not expecting. They really went all out this time, and I think it's reflected in the price, because we're not really getting that under $200 price point anymore. And this isn't even factoring in the switches, keycaps you'll need for a full build. So even though it's a marginal difference, it suddenly feels like this keyboard is for an entirely different audience. Or maybe I'm just misunderstanding Neo, because there's nothing wrong with this board. It's a great board. The design is just a little bit too good, and that costs extra.
If you like this video or the Neo 75, you should definitely check out my review on the Neo 80, because unlike a lot of other custom keyboards in the hobby, it's in stock and available for purchase. So there's another really good budget option out there for you, and one that might be a little better for your wallet. And that's all I have for you today.